Hey everyone, Off the Mic Sports Network here, reacting to the first ever game in the history of the 12-team playoff at Notre Dame Stadium, the battle for the state of Indiana. Notre Dame wins 27-17 over Indiana. This was really what this video is going to be about is not so much about the game, but what the the aftermath is really what this is about, because Notre Dame dominated this game. They were the better team. Jeremiah Love has a 98-yard run early in this game that really just changed the whole thing. Kirk Signetti not punting, choosing to punt in certain situations, and when he shouldn't have. Or you can debate that all you want. Like, we can get into the X's and O's of what happened in this game, but the reality of the situation is what you expect was going to happen. Notre Dame had won 10 consecutive games prior to this one. They were 11-1 coming in. They've been boat racing people ever since losing at home to Northern Illinois. This is one of the best teams in college football. Indiana's a great story. Great story. But from a talent perspective, they weren't up to par. They beat up on some really, porous teams, and we'll get to that in a second in talking about this whole, dick swinging competition about, oh man, we should have been in, but we didn't get in, and Indiana didn't belong in that. So we'll get to that in a second. But the one thing that I really need to acknowledge right off the top, before we get into the Indiana discussion of this whole thing, is can we understand and can we acknowledge, I'll throw up my one for my tribal chief Roman Reigns, can we acknowledge that Notre Dame's really fucking good, okay? I think it's really disrespectful to Marcus Freeman, Riley Leonard, Jeremiah Love, Xavier Watts. I could keep naming a bunch of players on the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. This is one of the best Notre Dame football teams I've seen in a really long time. This team can go win a national championship. That's what this game should be about. It shouldn't be about, did Indiana belong in the playoff? It shouldn't be about, did Indiana show that they were a fraud? This shouldn't be about, should Alabama or any of the other SEC teams get in, despite them shitting all over themselves down the season and vomiting and just cratering their conference's opportunity to get into the playoff. That shouldn't be what this is about. Number one, I want to make sure that I acknowledge this at the top of the video before I get knee deep into the Indiana side of this story. Notre Dame is one of the best teams in college football, and I'm heavily leaning towards picking them. I picked them in an early poll to basically say, yeah, I'm picking them early on right now, especially knowing the uncertainty surrounding Carson Beck, and maybe they believe in Gunnar Stockton. I think Notre Dame's got a really good chance to win this game. I really do, in that Sugar Bowl on January 1. But if you learned anything from this game, it is not any of these external things, these bullshit storylines, which we seem to do every single year when the last team in gets blown out, doesn't belong, or it's like it's a Cincinnati or whoever, and we just yell and scream and we stomp our feet and say, oh, my team should have been it. Oh, my team should have been it. No, that is not what this is about. Indiana, we'll get to them in a second. Indiana got to earn their spot in this field, and I will get more down that road in a second. But the most important thing that you need to know about this game is Notre Dame can win a freaking national championship, and I think it's really disrespectful to anyone of these SEC coaches, Elaine Kiffin, anybody who's tweeting out, mocking, and making fun of Indiana when the reality of the situation is Notre Dame proved on a national stage tonight that they are one of the best teams in college football. They could go beat Georgia, and they can go win this national championship this year. They are that damn good, okay? So that's the first part of this thing. Second part of this thing, can we stop trying to discredit what Indiana accomplished this season? Can we stop? Indiana did nothing wrong this season. They did nothing wrong. They lost 2 games to 2 really good teams. They got pretty much manhandled, which is what you expect. They played a kind of soft schedule in an unbalanced league that now has 18 teams. They actually played. If you look at their schedule before the season, it seemed like a pretty daunting schedule. You played the two combatants in the national championship game, Michigan and Washington. They weren't good. The Michigan and Washington were average to, below average. They underachieved, or they weren't at the par of what was expected. And then they played Ohio State at the end of the year in the shoe. Not many teams go in there and win games. That's just the reality of the situation. Curt Cignetti and Indiana did absolutely nothing wrong this season. They did nothing to warrant all of this hate. Yes, Curt Cignetti went on College Game Day and basically said they beat the shit out of a bunch of opponents and then played scared throughout this game, punting the ball on a 4th and 11 with about 10, 11 minutes to go in the fourth quarter of this game, down 20-3, I think it was at that point. That was just not a good decision. And it's just, listen, if you're surprised that Indiana got blown away in this game, you shouldn't be. But the reality of the situation is, do not make the referendum of what happened on Selection Sunday. And I give credit to Nicole Auerbach, a colleague of mine. It's somebody I've gotten the chance to work with at SiriusXM. She pointed out that, listen, these games that are made after Selection Sunday, they are not a referendum on what happened. Indiana earned their spot into this field. They won 11 games in a Power 4 conference. Yes, I understand all the negotiating things about schedules, but there are a lot of teams in America that played shitty schedules. Look at Texas. They played nobody. Well, they lost their only 2 games of the year to ranked teams. Who the hell did they beat? Vanderbilt, Michigan, and Texas A&M? Texas beat nobody. There are schedules out there. There are unbalanced schedules in these conferences that have now been realigned all over the place. The conference realignments just wrecked this sport. That is not a reason to hate on Indiana. Yes, there was a clear talent gap in this game, but to say that Indiana did not belong in this playoff is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And then again, it's also really disrespectful to Notre Dame, okay? It's really disrespectful to Notre Dame because Indiana, yes, there is a talent gap, but Indiana is still a really good team. And Notre Dame manhandled this team. They gave up some points there at the end. It ended up being a 10-point game, but that wasn't really indicative of what this was. Notre Dame was up 27-3 in this game. So I just, the narratives that were being spun during and now after this game are just infuriating to me because, like I said, it's just an indictment on both of these teams that participated. Notre Dame deserves way more credit for what they have done. And we're focusing more on Indiana and if they're a fraud or not. And then, listen, if you're an SEC, if you're one of these SEC media honchos who are just going to throw up schedules of what Indiana did during the season, you know what? Here's a fun fact. You want to know what Alabama did at the end of the season? They lost to Oklahoma. Maybe the worst Oklahoma team I've seen in 15, 20 years. They lost to Oklahoma, whose quarterback transferred out. They lost, scoring 3 points in that game. They lost to Vanderbilt. Yeah, you lost to Tennessee. And you beat Georgia. Great. Don't lose to Oklahoma and Vandy. And you're in this field. You had a mulligan against Tennessee. Tennessee's in the playoff. You want to know why Tennessee's in the playoff? Yeah, they had a bad loss, but yeah, they didn't have a second bad loss. Okay? That's why. I just don't, it's just, I don't get it. I mean, South Carolina, I kind of feel bad about because I actually think South Carolina could have made some noise in this playoff, but they lost games early in the season. I'm sorry. That's just the way it goes. Ole Miss, you want to be mad because, you beat Georgia, you beat the SEC champ, you manhandled them. Congratulations. Don't lose to Florida and Kentucky. Don't lose to LSU. And you're in this playoff. It's that simple. Indiana didn't have any immense wins, but they navigated a schedule with 1 loss. I understand strength of schedule. I understand strength of record. I understand all of these arguments, but the games on the field have to matter. Okay? And whether you like it or not, Indiana navigated the schedule and they lost 2 games the entire season. That's the reality of this. I'm sick and tired of all this ESPN rhetoric about, because they've got a massive conflict of interest with their media rights, them owning the SEC media rights, and then just trying to angle all of these arguments and these narratives of how, SMU doesn't belong, or, Indiana doesn't belong. It's so aggravating. And I said it off the top, and I'll say it again. Doing all of these things in the aftermath of this game, I think, is really, really disrespectful to Notre Dame, who I think can, honest to God, win a national championship this year. Great job by Marcus Freeman. Great job by Riley Leonard and this whole team. They lost to Northern Illinois in their own building. And 3 months later, they're hosting a home playoff game and winning. And now they get to go to New Orleans and play Georgia, which is going to be a hell of a game. And again, like I said, I think Notre Dame's got a decent chance to win that game and pull the upset and get to the quarterfinals, get from the quarterfinals to the semifinals, which would be awesome. It would be really awesome. Seeing a big brand like Notre Dame be able to do well is really good for this sport. So that's my reaction. Very fiery reaction. Like, share, and subscribe. OT Mike Sports, Off the Mic 28 on Twitter if you want to follow me and whatnot. I will talk to you guys real soon. Bye-bye.